A wild one in Starkville.
The party continues in Starkville.
He's a pleasant lad from Starkville.
Greetings and welcome to Starkville. I'm Jayson Stark. I write about baseball for The Athletic. Once again, I am joined by my good friend, writer, broadcaster, professor, and distinguished former major leaguer, Doug Glanville. Hey, Doug, how are you, man?
I am doing great over here. Very well. How are you?
I'm good because I've got heat in my house. Unlike you.
Yeah, I'm in a jacket, parka, scarf, and a hat. Yes.
Yeah, why would you need heat in February? It's overrated.
Yes.
All right, coming up later, we will bring in our good friend Ken Rosenthal to digest one of the biggest trades of all time. But first, Doug, I'm just going to ignore the whole heat situation in your house and ask you this. Has this been the craziest offseason in the history of baseball? Like, I'm kind of kidding here, but not really. I mean, seriously, what's the last offseason crazier than this? I can't remember one.
I mean, I'm trying to think of big signings, controversies. I guess the PED scandal was a pretty popular offseason. But
popular?
Yeah, it's
okay.
Yeah, it's taking a page out of Wicked, the play here. But yeah, it's. I mean, I don't know. It's unbelievable what's happening in the game. The existential crisis, the sign stealing. You have great players getting moved town to town. Big sign. It's pretty loco right now. Yeah.
I was thinking about it. Like December, we had like 20 big free agents sign in the same week at the winter meetings. All right, then we get to January. The Astros earthquake hits, the Hall of Fame. Somebody doesn't vote for Derek Jeter. Then the next thing you know, it's February. And now we just have seen one of the biggest trades in baseball history. Mookie Betts getting traded. So, here's a question for you, because you're one of the smartest and most inventive wordsmiths that I know. Can you think of a better term for the off season than off season? Because there isn't much off in it.
No, there's no more off. I mean, given that I'm kind of obsessed with heat right now, since I don't have any, I think the hot stove is how you get into it. It's no longer an off season. You have to do something hot stove, but stove is a little dated. So maybe we bring something like, with microwave, something with technology that steps it up of like a higher level of heat. So maybe it's the acid off season. That could have some connotations we have to be careful with, I guess. But yeah, it's got to do something with the heat. So I want to work with that one right there.
You're obsessed with heat right now for some reason.
Yeah. Yes. It's coming back.
Yeah.
It's coming back on.
Yeah. I mean, we need a term that doesn't have off in it. So that's going to be your assignment for the next podcast. But I mean, think about this. Like the NFL, free agency hits in the off season. It starts and it's over in about 24 hours. Then they have a little downtime. Then the draft comes along in the spring. And then everybody goes to the beach until training camp starts. But that does not describe the offseason that we experience in our sport.
Nope, not in the least bit. So we're just getting us ready for spring training. So this is our training here.
Yeah.
January, winter training, we could call it.
Yeah, that might be it. Winter training, because the spring part of the winter training comes along in 5 minutes. All right, we've got so much to get to on this podcast, my friend. We've got the trade. The Astros make some fascinating hires for the new manager and general manager, and we've got some incredible Astros stats. We've got the Chris Bryant ruling and what that means. Pete Rose back in our podcast lives. But before we get to that, let's explain how this podcast works. We divide it up into innings. We start every inning with a trivia question so I can do my shtick as the Wink Martindale of baseball. And you can find the first 4 innings pretty much everywhere at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, TuneIn. I mean, everywhere that podcasts are disseminated. But then if you're a subscriber, you get to keep listening because we have bonus innings available on the Athletic app and the Athletic website. So if you are not a subscriber and you want to be a subscriber and you want to keep listening to this podcast, you can get a 30% discount on a subscription to The Athletic. You just have to click on the link where you found us in the first place. That'll do it. Everybody good? Everybody got all this? Tremendous. Now let's play our game. Doug, here is your first inning question. Just 2 years ago, Mookie Betts won an MVP award for the Red Sox. Now, the Red Sox have actually had a bunch of MVPs, but here's your question, man. Who's the last outfielder before Mookie to win an MVP award in Boston?
Okay. Ooh, I feel some trick questions going on here. Okay, so now David Ortiz, was he considered an outfielder at some point?
Never.
All right.
Come on.
Yeah, David Arias was, though. Was he ever David? Yeah. David, okay, let's see.
I should also mention David Ortiz never won an MVP award. So
yeah, that's another problem. So I'm thinking out loud here. What about Manny? Did Manny Ramirez?
That's your guess? That's your final answer? That's a wonderful guess, Doug. It's so wrong, though. Manny never won an MVP award. I'm going to run the actual answer. Takes you way back to the 1970s. Perhaps that helps. It was a guy named Jim Rice. Jim Rice.
Oh, Rice too.
1978.
Wow,
in between, we've had
shocking.
Right? We've had Dustin Pedroia win for the Red Sox. We've had Mo Vaughn win for the Red Sox. And we've had Roger Clemens win for the Red Sox. But back in the 70s, both Jim Rice and Fred Lynn won as outfitters. I mean, Jim Rice played a lot of DH, I believe, 78. But he was, right? He was mostly an outfitter. Let's go with that.
All right. We'll go with that. He was great at the wall. I remember the Green Monster. He was very good at that.
Doug, we are in the presence of greatness today because Ken Rosenthal joins us to help us make sense of this monstrous Mookie Betts trade. And Ken's been all over this story. We're honored to welcome him to Starkville. Ken, I just want to say we would be happy to give you the key to the city, except that we don't even have a city.
Well, it is an honor to be in Starkville. I hear it's one of the more pleasant places to live in the United States.
It's entertaining. I'll say that.
We're actually in Mars. We're actually on the surface of Mars. So we're not in the U.S. We're on Mars.
Well, wherever you are, I hear it's a great place.
Yeah, there's no heat in portions of Starkville too. You should know that. Wherever the heck Doug is, on Mars or wherever he is, there's no heat. But we're not going to worry about it. Doug's heat. We spent way too much time on this already. Let's break down this trade. And all right, let's start here. This feels like one of the biggest trades in modern history, maybe any kind of history. You know, like it's well documented that I'm a knucklehead with too much time on my hands. I spent way too much time looking at this today, but I cannot find a single trade ever in which a team traded for a former MVP position player and a former Cy Young in the same deal. So that's pretty crazy. Then, as I wrote in The Athletic, you know, players like Mookie basically get traded once in a generation. We're talking about guys like A-Rod in his prime, Ken Griffey Jr. That's about it, at least in the 21st century. So let me ask you, Ken, just on that level, how incredible is this deal? And do you think that we should even bother playing out the season? Or should we just do the American League half so that they can determine who plays the Dodgers in the World Series?
Well, Jason, I thought you put it well in what you wrote and what you just said. This doesn't happen very often as far as just the caliber of Mookie getting traded. And then to add Price into the equation, even though he's not the Price that won the Cy Young Award, it's pretty astonishing. So from all of those perspectives, it was an enormously big trade. And yet what made it bigger to me was the involvement of the third team and the peripheral involvement of the fourth team, because there were all these bodies flying around. That, to me, escalated it even higher. It wasn't simply Mookie Betts getting traded. It was Mookie Betts, the Dodgers making a deal with the Twins involving Kenta Maeda, and then just making a deal with the Angels involving Jock Peterson and Ross Stripling. this is monumental on so many levels. That's why we're sitting here trying to unravel it.
It really is. And, as you pointed out in what you've written, it looks like the Dodgers have managed to make this deal, depending on how much money they're paying of David Price, and still say under the threshold. That seems pretty amazing to me.
That's amazing.
How about you? What's the degree of difficulty of that?
Very high degree of difficulty, but it's the kind of that Friedman stays up all night trying to pull off. And he, as you know, Jason, Doug, you guys know this, he hates giving up high quality prospects. And really, with the exception of Yordan Alvarez, who he had never seen play, under Friedman, the Dodgers have not given up top prospects. They just haven't. Even for Machado, even for Darvish, even for Josh Reddick and Rich Hill. Those deals were deals that involve some potentially good players, but nobody who has really come back to haunt them. Frankie Montas, I guess, would be the closest, and he's got a PED suspension last year. So to pull this off and to not give up even a Jeter Downs, who's a top 100 prospect in the fielder, and still be within range of luxury tax threshold. And we don't know the exact dollars yet because this thing is not official, but it's a safe assumption, I think, to believe that about half of Price's money will be going to LA, $8 million out of $96 million. If all that's the case, they're going to be right there with the threshold. And that is a trick that's a 1 in 100 trick right there to me. And that is what makes it so special from the Dodgers' perspective, because, okay, it's Mookie for 1 year and it's Price for 3. Neither of those outcomes is especially advantageous, but they limited the exposure with finances and also with prospects, and that's a big win for them. Now, granted, they lose some depth with Peterson and with Stripling, with Maeda, but they're also getting David Price and they're getting Mookie Betts, and they signed Alex Wood to replace Ryu. So they're going to be fine. As for your other question, the one about should the National League bother competing with them next year, I would say the answer to that is still yes. And the NL East has some relief. And I can see in a playoff series, an NLCS, the Nationals, even the Mets with their starting pitching, giving the Dodgers a fight. Now, of course, all these teams can regroup at the deadline as well, but don't forget the Braves in this equation either, because they're really good. So I don't know that it's a lock that they get to the World Series. This was a play, certainly, not to series, but to win it, which is the one thing that they haven't done under Friedman. 7 straight division titles right now, but no World Series victories since '88. And I think Price is the sleeper in this deal. He has a shot to be not the old David Price, but certainly an effective major league pitcher again.
The one thing about the Dodgers is they care less about volume from their starting pitchers than just about any team in the league because they have so much pitching depth. So they just want quality from David Price, whether that's 100 innings, 125 innings, 150 innings, whatever it is. They're not going to push him to run out there every 5 days just to say they did. And that's another reason he's such a great fit. You put him in the NL West. Great fit for David Price to revive his career, get him out of Boston, all the stuff that swirled around him there. And then there's just the whole bottom line. The Dodgers won 106 games and added a 6 to 10 win player without giving up any really critical pieces off their major league roster, depending on how you look at Jock Peterson, right? Wow. Doug, I know you wanted to ask Ken about the Red Sox, so we should definitely do that.
Ken, a couple of questions. The first question I think of is, when you go over the deal, there's a lot of calculus involved. You think of the economics, the moves, the pieces, the timing, the salaries. But what's your take on what this means for the game? Is there a concern that it's a lot harder now to just have that franchise guy, Mookie Betts, being a Red Sox for life and being able to accomplish that? What's your sense and concern for that loss in transactions like this?
Well, I have concern for the game, Doug, but it doesn't necessarily relate to this transaction in the way that you're describing. The Red Sox, had they not made a series of decisions over the years, would not have depleted their prospect base, would not have gotten into this situation with the luxury tax, would have been more flexible, kind of like the Dodgers were entering this deal. they're in a flexible position to add a big-time impact player this offseason. And